Welcome to People in Insurance. This podcast explores the mix of diversity, culture and tech innovations in our industry. Join us as we sit down with trailblazers, thought leaders and innovators who are reshaping the landscape of insurance, bringing you stories that redefine the narrative. We are your guide to the evolving landscape of insurance. This is People in Insurance, brought to you by Mackay.
So welcome to People in Insurance, Changing the Conversation. And I'm absolutely excited to have Andre Symes, who's the Group CEO of Genasys Technologies. Andre, I'm going to start by saying I did quite a big research and we are friends and I will put it out there, and I am quite biased that I am a board advisor for Genasys, but I was looking to find some personal shit about you and I found literally nothing. So the start of this podcast, I want to know more about Andre, and I want to know more about you, your family, your hobbies, that kind of thing. So just tell me a bit about your history.
Oh, no problem. First of all, thank you for having me on, Sharon. And as you say, we've been friends for a while. So I think you probably know a bit more about me than most people. The reason why there's probably so little about me personally online is because the majority of my life revolves around the business. You know, I really believe in our brand. Genasys is my life, or it was a big part of my life until my family expanded recently. So I think in the short, the recent past is that I'm a relatively new resident to the UK. I moved here 5 years ago. Unfortunately, just after that, lockdown happened. And then my wife and I were stuck in a small flat for a year and a half in lockdown, thinking that we were going to travel the world, see Europe, because coming from Cape Town or Johannesburg, seeing Europe is obviously quite difficult. Stuck in lockdown. And then all of a sudden we started a family by accident. In
the room, in
lockdown, yeah, it was a lockdown baby, and I must say, you know, going through the birthing process during COVID was quite a challenge. Yeah. We were stuck in the basement of Chelsea Westminster Hospital with my wife, you know, almost fully dilated because there was a queue upstairs. So it was quite interesting.
And you were able to be with her?
I was able to be with her for the final stages,
right,
but not the middle stages. So she was taken away for quite a while on her own. They were very strict there, but that was interesting. And then straight after Sebastian, as we called him, Insurtech Seb at the time, was born, we went into a raise. You know, we went and got external investment from an organization. So lockdown,
full on,
long hair, baby on the lap, trying to pitch to investors while you are looking after a toddler was very interesting. But yeah, then like in my spare time, I used to be quite an avid cyclist, and also during lockdown, I got kind of bored of riding on these indoor trainers. And the one day I tweeted out, I'm bored. Does anybody else in the Insurtech space want to go for a ride? And we kind of spawned this thing called the Tour de Insurtech, which is a cycling event that we have every year. But I've been very, very ill-disciplined with my cycling recently. And I also have a little bit of an affinity for motorsport, which is quite cool. So I do occasionally, when I get down to South Africa, do a motorcycle race here and there, just to kind of blow off some steam.
And do you do any in the UK, or is it too scary in the UK because it's always wet, isn't it?
There's a couple of reasons. Yeah, so it's always based in the UK, but it's actually quite a highly regulated sport in the UK. You have to do so many different tests, and you have to go through various kinds of track days to get your license, etc. Whereas in South Africa, I already have a racing license there, so I just do that. And I do think that if I had to buy a racing motorbike in the UK, I might end up getting divorced because I probably spend most of my time at the track. So the geographic distance to my motorcycles helps me from not overdoing it too much.
Yeah. So being split across a couple of continents is quite tough, isn't it? Because, you know, you've been in the UK for 5 years, but the majority of your workforce is actually in SA, isn't it? How do you cope with that?
In early doors, it was quite a challenge. You know, so when we were predominantly South African based and we started expanding into the UK and the US markets 2018-ish, Craig and myself spent 50% of the year away from home. That's when my family was still in South Africa. So at the moment, we are headquartered in the UK. We've got a centre of excellence in Johannesburg that looks after our ongoing customer support and ensuring that we give customers great service. And then we've got a product and innovation campus. The heart of the business is based in Cape Town. But we've got customers in the US too. So we have to kind of jump between three different continents. And as I said, it was difficult at first because we spent a lot of time traveling to the UK, opening businesses, showcasing our product. But as we grew the organization and kind of started growing nicely, we were able to appoint really competent senior staff and senior teams in South Africa. So we have people like myself and our CFO and our chief marketing officer based in the UK, but our CTO and our COO, etc., all based in South Africa, and they do a really good job at running the business. So having to go back there once a quarter just to do a little bit of meeting and greeting the team does make it a bit easier. So having competent staff looking after your team in South Africa really, really helps.
And I think that you're quite well known for your interaction with your staff and your teams, and I think that really does show in copious amounts at how long people stay with you as well. So you've got some quite long-termers that stay with you, haven't you?
Yeah, we do. It's actually incredible. I was actually running the numbers the other day to kind of check how it's looking, and 35% of our 100 FTEs that we have with Genasys have been with us for more than 5 years. I think 50% of those have been with us for more than 10. So we've got a really core team that believes in the vision, believes in the product. They built it themselves, right? So they genuinely are into it. And what's really cool is that sometimes you take those people to customers, and when you showcase a product during an RFP process or you do a live demo, you should see the sparkle in their eye to see how excited customers get with the work that they've done, because often as a developer you don't really see that, right? So we try and make a point of bringing non-business development people into the business development cycle to kind of like see firsthand how excited customers get about the cool things that they do.
Well, I mean, I can feel it. You exude energy, and I think that certainly extols the virtues in your business. It's a very energetic business, and you're transforming other businesses to enable them to be great businesses. So I think that it's a fantastic core to have, is that energy, and you completely exude it. So I think that I want to talk about projects, and I want to talk about success and failure, and I want to know, because having sat on your board and listened to some of the stories that are told, some are brilliant and some are not so great. And I think that, I just want to ask, why do so many large-scale software companies fail in the insurance industry? What is it that you feel, why are they failing? And are they failing? I mean, I'm probably asking a question there. Are they failing to deliver?
Yeah, I think the first thing that you need to do is kind of define what success is, right? So a project being completely cancelled isn't the only failure. Something taking twice as long as it should have taken should be considered a failure to a degree too. But you're not wrong when you say the majority of transformation projects in the in the insurance sector fail. We've spent a lot of time trying to understand what are the causations of these failures and how can we as an organization help mitigate that. And it boils down to, I think, three things, right? So number one is product fit, is that there are a number of vendors in the industry that have raised substantial amounts of capital, and they really have to pay this back to their investors over a period of time. So what they start doing is they sell to anybody and everybody that is willing to buy from them, even if it isn't really the right product. And sometimes, you might be pitching something that doesn't fully exist within your platform just yet, and you aren't fully transparent about this. So then when it comes to go live, the customers realize, oh my goodness, this organization doesn't have an accounting platform, or the billing doesn't work the way that it was originally described, and then that becomes a bit of a problem. So there's a responsibility on software vendors to ensure that they are as open as honest about what they can do and what is on their roadmap that they still are going to do. That's one of the reasons. The other one is vendor readiness, is that very often customers think that they need to change, and we often advise them not to, because we go, what are you actually trying to do here? Why are you trying to do a transformation program? Are you trying to sell more product? Are you trying to future-proof against aging technology? What is the reason? And then once a new platform provider comes in, all of a sudden your operating processes start changing, and they haven't thought about this through. Target operating models haven't been defined. So you start trying to match the business operations to what the platform can do, and then sometimes they diverge.
You open a can of worms at that point, don't you?
Oh my goodness, absolutely, And then also, look, a lot of the motivation for transformation programs is to help reduce administrative costs within organizations. So there's pushback from people in the organization that think that their jobs are potentially at risk, because ultimately what you're trying to do is automate as much as the human element as possible. And then thirdly, what we've seen is often a cause of project delays is misalignment in third-party incentive to project successes. And what I mean by that is that quite often you'll have third-party firms coming in to help with the customer with the project, with the appointment of a vendor, with the governance of the project, oversight, project assurance work. And traditionally that is billed on a times and materials basis. And traditionally vendors do kind of fixed cost, fixed scope projects that are kind of paid on milestones. So if you really want to succeed in that area, you sort of have to align the commercial incentives between third-party consultants effectively and the vendors. If the one is incentivized to sell bums and seats and the other one's incentivized to go quickly,
there's a misalignment.
Yeah. It's kind of like how you have to align your executive to the same targets. Yeah. You kind of, your CFO aligned to cost saving and someone else only, incentivized to do growth. They all have to be aligned kind of to the company strategy.
Yeah. And I'm sure that you've got examples of where that has significantly taken people off track. But we've had lots of conversations about transformation and about data. And I think data is one of the key things that from my perspective, having run an MGA myself and being on the board of the MGA, data is the key element of output, isn't it? In all of these projects, data has got to be key, and it's the integrity of that data for a number of reasons. It's finding capacity, it's making sure that you're aligning yourself with your fiduciary duty to your insurer. So I think that, knowing what the output is really important, isn't it? Knowing what you want to get out of the information that you put into a policy administration system. And does that change dramatically between each company, or is it pretty much of a muchness?
The underlying data or the outputs don't change. The structure of the output data changes depending on what the capacity providers require. And I think that's probably a challenge that we find as an industry, is that what does a capacity provider want from the MGA? What kind of information do they need to see, and how quickly they need to see it? So the output is data, but ultimately I think the missing word there is the quality of the data. I was at an event recently where I was listening to a couple of reinsurers talking about the fact that the data that they receive is sometimes 18 months old. If you are working with data that is 18 months old, obviously your modeling is going to be impacted on that. So what we need to try and do as an industry is get the data to the providers as quickly as possible, and not just in simple kind of reporting, but as in direct. Link the platforms up via APIs. Get that data across to the carriers real time so they can understand what the exposure is, they can understand what the loss ratios are. And that way there's higher confidence. With the higher confidence comes more capacity.
And I think that there are a number of MGAs just starting out in life. And a lot are still working from Excel spreadsheets. They're still working at a very minimal output basis, really. What do you think that we need to do as an industry to facilitate that transition from being a smaller MGA? And we see them growing quite rapidly, don't we? Do you think there's enough out there to facilitate those guys into moving to software platforms?
Well, at some point in time when they scale, they're probably going to have to move to an approved software provider, or at least someone that has gone through kind of, the FCA checks. Excel basically holds up the entire financial services industry, right? We know this, but it can corrupt data quite quickly. There obviously are massive risks in running large organizations on Excel. It also has limitations. So the advice that I would give there is to kind of make sure that, when you do make the leap from being an Excel-based MGA, is to find something that can scale with your organization. So what you don't want to do is to jump from Excel onto a low-cost platform and then have to transform again once you've hit a certain level of scale to another platform and then jump to another one again. Find a partner that has the ability to give you a good solid platform at a good price point, and then scale with that. So buy for 5 years from now, not for where you want to be next year.
Yeah, no, that's really sound advice. I think we've seen quite aggressive behaviour in the software market due to high valuations. How do you think this dynamic affects insurance industry's approach to software investments? How do you, we're talking about buying behaviour, and really, are there any warning signs that MGAs or insurers should look for when they're choosing a software vendor, especially in today's market? Is there any advice you can give in that respect?
Yeah, I think we went through a really exciting period in the Insurtech space, for the last couple of years. Let's call it up until COVID. People were trading at crazy valuations, raising crazy capital on, very low revenues. And when you did that, the capital markets have changed. I mean, they've all retracted. Raising funds right now is rather expensive. So what I would kind of say is that look over and above the standard stuff of ensuring that you can see what the platform can actually do, make sure that you have demos, POCs, interrogate it. Don't just look at projectaware and presentation stuff. Actually do some proper work, get access to a sandbox and understand what that platform is. That's the standard kind of advice that you would give an organization. But I think the canary down the coal mine for organizations looking to buy platforms is try to understand the capital structures of the platform providers that you are thinking to acquire. Because yes, they might have raised £100 million, but if they're only doing £20 million in revenue a year, there's probably something not that great there. How are they going to sustain that run rate on the long term? And remember, when you sign up for a platform, you're not doing it for a couple of years. You're doing it for hopefully 5 to 10 years. So that organization still needs to be around in 10 years' time. And if they can't carry on raising at the valuations that they previously raised at, they're going to be ripe for acquisition in a couple of years.
Yeah, indeed. And I think that, that support for MGAs through their life cycle is so important, isn't it? MGAs and brokers as well. I mean, I think it's anything with a delegated underwriting authority. And I think you're absolutely right in pointing out that life cycle from acorn to oak is what you're looking for within a software provider, and that's something I think that you guys have really stepped up to the mark on, isn't it? You're producing and working with MGAs to make sure that you create the right software packages for them. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you've done and what you're doing to facilitate that?
We are in a fortunate position where we've got shareholders who believe in building a business rather than just building a venture for the sake of building a venture. And what that has allowed us to do is to be controlled in our growth. And what that means is that we aren't simply selling to people for the sake of selling. So we can not be selective about which customers we sign up. We don't always sell customers to go away, but we don't have to sell for the sake of it. And what that means is that we can actually focus on our ICP, on the customers that we see work best for us. And the fact that we don't have to sell 30 platforms a year to make shareholder, or to kind of make targets, we can scale slowly, and that also means that we can have direct relationships with all of our customers. So, Genasys currently has 30 customers, and every single one of those CEOs of those customers has direct phone access to me. They phone me up if they've got a problem. If they phone me up if they want to potentially acquire another business, can we accommodate it? Having personal relationships with your customers is really important. And you can't do that if you have to scale exponentially. You can't have that CEO to CEO relationship with 150 customers. And that's not where we want to be in the short term.
Yeah. So just on that basis, there's a lot of responsibility in what you do. Because you're kind of the turnkey event that gets some MGAs to that next level. And I think that, the question I want to ask is, what keeps you awake at night?
Oh, well,
except for the babies.
Save's now 3 and a bit, and he mostly sleeps through. Thank goodness. What worries me the most about the insurance industry, what just keeps me awake at night, is kind of bigger picture stuff. And what I mean by that is that when I got to the UK 5 years ago, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, we were going to change the world, I was not quite prepared for how reluctant to change the markets are. So what worries me is the long-term current sustainability of the current market, with the current insurance structures. We could showcase 5 years ago from a technology point of view how you could build a completely autonomous insurance business, almost like a neobank, Starling, etc. But there's just resistance to change. And that worries me because we kind of need to start start appreciating the fact that tomorrow's buyers are not buying insurance in the way that today's buyers are buying insurance. You know, we look at kind of, you know, I look at my younger brother who's now 30 years old. They don't own cars. They don't own homes. They just live in the gig. And, you know, unless we start shaping insurance to accommodate that, I think we're going to be disrupted. And we're not going to be disrupted internally. We're going to be disrupted from outside. You look at things like, you know, Elon Musk's self-drive and the taxis that he's launching. Those things have got like 0% accident rates, you know, when they all work together. What does that do for motor insurance? Where's motor insurance going to be once we have 0% accident rates on autonomous driving? It's going to be a challenge. So that keeps me awake, but hopefully by then I'll be retired. So
well, I mean, it's great to leave a legacy, and I think that, you know, that probably brings us into talking about something that we've not talked about before, but I think is the AI and the impact of that, because, you know, it has a significant impact on what we're doing, and you know, you hear AI being spoken about every Insurtech conference going. How do you think that's going to impact what you provide to the insurance industry?
Yeah, every year there is a new buzzword that does the rounds, right? It was blockchain, big data. There's always some reason for us to kind of, I likened it to cats chasing the laser pointer, you know, chasing the next big thing.
I love playing that game.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how I sometimes feel, you know, some of our C-levels are. Like, what's in the hype cycle? What are we all going to kind of, you know, panic about at the moment? Having said that, you know, I don't think that AI is the same as something like blockchain or DLT, where it was a big hype and nothing really came from it. It is going to impact our lives. And it's something we need to lean into rather than try and steer clear of. What we've already seen is how, you know, what we term narrow AI being used in certain areas of the policy life cycle to enhance the experience for the customer. So there's a couple of people out there that are doing really good work on using AI to price, to place business. There's also some really good AI on FNOL or claims where we optimize those areas. But again, there's best of breed people that are raising a lot of capital and doing a really good job at that. And how we kind of consume that is through APIs. So our customers will go, we want to enhance the buying experience, we want to enhance the claims experience. Who do you recommend? We obviously scour the markets and we have relationships with people that can help us with that. But how we are utilizing AI ourselves is we're embedding it in our platform to make it more user-friendly for the people who actually use our platform.
As in building the products and all of those kind of things.
Building the products, or, you know, I would like to bring up all of Sharon Brown's claims history and in a chat, and then it'll bring up everything there. Bring up all the policies that she's had. It'll bring it up there. Or how do I optimize her? How do I do an MTA? So we're launching things like what we call the GG Copilot, which is kind of like a hand-holding a tool embedded within our platform. It has all of our training material, and then it just gives you a guide as to how to most optimally do things within the platform, but also it gives you access to all the unstructured data. Bring up all the documentation from Sharon, etc. Then they can pop it up. So we want to use AI to enhance our customers' lives, and then if they want to enhance their customers' lives, we can find the best of breed in that area and then bring it in via an API connection.
And I think that, you know, you interestingly point out all the people in the value chain, because you've got all of these augmented products that you can use via the API kind of portals. And that's a massive, you know, add-on to any piece of software that you can plug in whatever really the customer wants and needs as part of the augmentation process. So I suppose the possibilities are endless, aren't they?
If you have a core platform that has what I'd like to term hyperconnectivity, which means kind of dynamic APIs from front to the to claims, so across the entire policy life cycle, that becomes the point. It becomes a very good, what do you want to call it, a competitive advantage.
Yeah.
Because as you say, you can plug and play different technologies. So if you have a core platform, a system of record, and a claims platform, and a billing platform, and an accounting or an insurance accounting platform as your solid core, and you plug in a certain, you know, best of breed Insurtech on the front end, and maybe some enhancement in the middle, and something to optimize your claims, you know, you then create something unique through configuration. And we've kind of been pushing that as kind of one of the reasons why we stand out from the other people is that we have more than 500 API endpoints across the policy life cycle, which is incredible for a mid-market kind of competitive what would you call it? Challenger brand. We've invested the majority of our R&D in opening up our architecture. And it also means you can use the same core to launch different products without having to change the core. So we can plug into databases if you want to do pets or if you want to do cyber. We've got 350 different types of products, all the way from P&C through to specialty insurance running on our platform, because you just plug in what you need to plug in when you need to. And because it's a REST-based API, it takes days rather than months, and there's no need for middleware, which is really cool as well.
And I think that's always one of the challenges when you're working with an insurance entity, the competitiveness of the core product. And I think that the learning that those interactions create as you go through the process of working with lots of MGAs and brokers and in the delegated authority environment, you learn as you go. And I think some people are kind of like wary about how much they integrate into their platforms, how you use that going forward in the future. But I think what you've really clarified for me is that it's not so much about the core platform, it's about the augmentation, and that's where the competitive advantages come in. It's kind of like the platform is built to create the best of breed, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly the point, is that, look, a PaaS is supposed to be an enabler. It shouldn't be what controls the business. It should be, it enables a business to do what the business needs to do, whether that is optimizing operations, whether it is launching new products, whether it is future-proofing themselves. That's what the PaaS is supposed to do. It shouldn't be, well, here's the PaaS you've implemented, and now you are stuck with this monolithic platform for the next 10 years, and it restrains your business. Again, if you have something that is flexible and can accommodate various types of products, we'll be seeing a lot of consolidation in the MGA and the broker space at the moment. And you can only do that if you can have platforms that can accommodate multiple lines of business on the same instance.
Has there been a time when you've looked back and thought, do you know what, why did I start on that piece of a project? Or have there been any like resounding failures that you've really learnt from, that you've thought, do you know what, if I'd have done that slightly differently, if I'd have, because it's just interesting to learn from a dynamic CEO like you to see, there are paths of failure and how that's enhanced your delivery today.
Yeah, there are. And there's lots of lessons learned and many scars on the backs of, making mistakes along the way. I mean, any CEO telling you that they've had a perfect implementation history is lying to you. I think one of the biggest mistakes that we used to make in our implementations was sitting in front of the customer and going, right, what do you want? Here's a blank sheet of paper. And then designing something that you then kind of have to walk back onto what the platform can actually do, rather than putting down something that we're doing. So what we do now is we put down something that's pre-configured and go, how do you want to then change this into where you want to go? So rather than doing a transformation, you kind of do an evolution. And that is way easier to manage, and expectations are more closely aligned. So we implement in a more agile way now, where we put something down that is standardized, start making the iterative changes with the customer, hand in hand, and if we need to deviate from the original plan, we do so. And then you kind of build for 2 weeks, demo. Do you like what you see? No, fix it this way. Okay, great. Then we go and build that. And that's certainly been an improvement. But building things in a waterfall blank sheet of paper way, the reality and expectations diverge too much. And the bigger the delta between reality and expectation, the bigger the disappointment.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think that's where that misalignment comes in, isn't it? So I think that in terms of that delivery piece, it's really interesting because we want to give everything that we can to our customers, and sometimes we sort of over deliver, and we provide as much support as we possibly can. I'm just thinking back to sort of my own experiences. When you start to talk to a potential software vendor and you start to talk about how to integrate it, and you come from a place where you think that you're the expert as an MGA or a broker. You're the expert. You absolutely are in the product that you have. But you tend to find, like you've just said, that you want to dictate what that product does. And I think that sometimes we have to sit back and say, who is the expert here? And the expert is more often than not the software provider. And I think that we talked about changing operating models and changing in light of a software product that's coming in. You kind of go, well, we've got to get our shit together here before we do anything. And I think that delays software implementation massively, doesn't it? It's kind of like that delay from, okay, we need to change what we've got. You have that conversation. Do you really need to change what you've got? And if the answer is yes, it's then what's the journey to changing that? Because if you then start to have to look at all of your internal operating models, it then becomes this massive project that then doesn't get delivered for 18 months to 2 years, and you're still without a software system. And I think that the way that you maybe look at how we implement software is quite different.
Yeah, there is differences. So I think nail on the head. I mean, MGAs by definition are experts in their field when it comes to their product. That's why they exist. They understand that specific market and that product better than most. And in the same way that I would never in a million years think that I've got any sort of expertise in telling an MGA how they should structure their products or manage their risks, because they're the experts in it. When it comes to the implementation of the software, generally the software vendor is the expert in implementing their own product, if they are implementing their own product. Many outsource that implementation to someone else, which creates complexities. But, we have, through lots of mistakes, learned how to best implement our product. So sometimes when we meet with a customer and they might have an IT department that has a preconceived notion of how these things should run because they've done it once or twice before, you do often have a bit of an arm wrestle with that department going that, no, look, I understand why you want to implement it in that way, and that's how you successfully implemented system X, Y, and Z 5 years ago. But, we've got 50 Genasys implementations under our belt. We kind of know what works and what doesn't. So we just want to advise you that this is, if you want the path to success or the highest chance of success, let's try and do it this way, because this is where we found successes before. So when it comes to the implementation strategy, you really need to lean on the vendor or the software provider as to what they found works well for them. We would never dictate to an MGA how they should structure the product. And again, we need to lean on them or the insurer. How do you want your product to work? And we will make it work within the platform, rather than saying this is how the platform works, therefore change your product.
And it's also impossible not to speak from experience. So if you've come across something before, you know it's impossible not to go, do you know what, I've seen a failure in that area. It's probably best to look at it in a slightly different way. So I guess that your learned experiences will still have an impact.
Yeah, it should, as long as people are willing to listen and understand that this is a partnership more than anything else, right? Yeah. It's effectively a corporate marriage, because you're going to be vendors and partners, or vendor and customer for 10 years. And if you want that to be a happy relationship, you kind of have to concede on either side and find a middle ground in implementation, pricing, functionality, etc. So it's super important that vendors aren't just seen as someone that you can kind of muscle. You have to listen to what they have to bring to the table, particularly when it comes to their expertise and how to successfully deliver. And ask them also, if you do go through the process, which ones have failed and why did they fail? And I'll happily share that with any customer that wants to talk.
And I also think that one of the things that a buyer of a software product doesn't consider is the amount of time that they really need to invest in that initial integration period, because it's the testing side of things, it's the and I think it is often down to the software provider to sit down with them and say, this is the journey, because I think that that has to be really transparent, that testing is going to take a certain amount of time, but if you want the best of breed product or the software integrated well, you've got to commit that time. Have you seen failures in that area?
Yeah, absolutely. And well, I've seen stresses in that area.
Yeah.
And the reason is, I think, my colleague Craig always likens that changing platforms is like changing the engines of a airliner mid-flight. Because this BAU carries on. The MJ or the carrier or the broker still has to do business day to day.
Yeah.
And whilst they can potentially bring a couple of resources in from outside of the organization to help with the program, ultimately it's the product owners and their own BAs that are going to have to do the testing. So there's a responsibility on the software vendor to ensure that they do as good a job as they possibly can in their QA department. Because look, ultimately you still have to go through the user acceptance testing cycle. And if you start finding that a lot of that is failing, customers get quite despondent very quickly. They go like, do you understand what it is we're trying to do? Is there misalignment in expectation versus reality? So you kind of have to do a lot of quality assurance work pre that, because again, the people that are doing the UAT have day jobs. It's not their their jobs to just do testing. Some organizations are large enough where they have, departments that can do that. But the majority of the MGAs kind of need to lean on day-to-day operational people to help with their user acceptance testing.
Yeah. So I think, it's really clear that you have a huge energy and you're looking to the future. What are the big things that you can see coming in from product development? What are the things that you think are going to really hit the radars of the insurance world? What is it that you feel is the next kind of big thing? What innovations are coming along the line?
It's got to be AI. And again, I'm certainly not jumping on the wave. I'm always a bit more of a contrarian when it comes to the buzzword of the day. But AI is certainly going to change a lot of the way that we operate day to day, and that is possibly going to have an impact on insurance. So I think what we need to all start doing is figuring out how we're going to adopt and live with AI. It's not going away. You see the speed at which the various big artificial intelligence companies are growing. The value in people that are building the chips for them. You see NVIDIA, NVIDIA currently, being extremely highly valued. A couple of the firms right behind them. So it would be is that how do we incorporate AI? How do we use it to become better underwriters, better claims handlers? How do we use Gen AI to become better document writers, etc.? We have to start leaning into that. That's going to be what's going to disrupt or at least change the future in the world, and it's here to stay. And I know we are trying to somehow regulate it, but remember, there's a bunch of people that are not going to adhere to the regulation. There's going to be a bunch of bad actors. So we have to just lean into the fact that AI is here to stay. It's going to carry on growing. It's going to consume us. So use the tool rather than resist the tool.
Is there any advice that you can give to the listeners who are thinking about procuring a software tool? Is there any advice that you can give to them? It's just really clean cut, and it's, this is what you should be looking for when you look for a software provider, apart from saying Genasys.
No, of course not. No, and Genasys isn't always the answer. And this is the wonderful thing about us, is that we can say to, last week quite literally say to a customer, why are you changing? You don't have a burning issue. So don't change. It's not worth the risk. And if you can find people that are willing to have that open conversation with you, that honest conversation, that's the important part. Because ultimately, yes, you're a product provider, and you sell insurance, but you are led by people. And ultimately, we sell software, but we're still led by people, and our product is built by people. So one of the biggest areas that is overlooked is there a culture fit? Can I do business with these people for the next 5 to 10 years? That's the question you really need to ask yourself. And if your spidey senses go, something is awry, or they seem like they're just selling for the sake of it, or, they might be the wolves of Lime Street, maybe trust your guts on that. But I think if you can build a good relationship and find people that you can work with, that's really important.
So I think trust, honesty, integrity really leads your business, doesn't it? And how you sell.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been absolutely wonderful speaking to you. And I look forward to our next conversation.
Well, thank you for having me on, Sharon. I'll see you soon.
Yes, perfect. At the next board meeting.
Next week.
Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to another enlightening episode of People in Insurance. If you enjoyed today's insights and want to stay connected with the latest industry trends, be sure to subscribe, rate and leave a review. Feel free to reach out to us on social media or through our website to share your thoughts and suggestions, or even to nominate someone whose contribution deserves to be heard. Until next time, signing off from People in Insurance.